You might be able to allow now.
Oh, yeah, no, now it's working.
Okay,
All right.
good.
Thanks.
Sorry, I had to figure out how to give you permissions there.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So the first thing I want to just mention is we've started producing a report on the Chester County economy. I'm going to give you a quick overview of some of the things that it has, but it's something you may want to look at on our website. And most of the data in this is from 2018, 2019, so it's pre-pandemic. But I think we all know we've had a strong economy in the county. And some of our strengths include high growth in our gross domestic product in the county over the years. We're the dark blue line there, and you can see how we've pulled away from some of the other counties. Our percent change in employment between 2000 and 2018 was the largest one of some of our comparable counties. On commuting in and out of the county, we're balanced. We have just about the same number commuting out as commuting in from our neighboring counties. We generally have a highly paid and educated workforce, low unemployment rates. On education here, you can see that if you look at the bottom column there, Chester County has 54% of residents with a bachelor's degree or higher. The next closest would be Montgomery County at 49% of these comparable counties. And our labor force participation is also traditionally high. As you can see here, 69.1%. So it's higher labor force participation of those who are in the labor force or could be in the labor force. And our unemployment rate has always run a little lower than the nation, Philadelphia, the state, or our neighboring counties. And we have higher incomes, and this is the median household income in 2019. It's now over 100,000, latest I've heard. We have a diverse economy, not overly dependent on any one industry. Here are some of our stronger industries in the county: management of companies, finance and insurance, ag, professional tech services, life sciences, software publishing, scientific research. One way you can look at this is location quotient. A location quotient of 1 means that we would be the same ratio of jobs in this industry as the nation as a whole. So when you have a much higher than 1 number, that means you're more concentrated in that industry. So here are some of the ones that we have exceptionally high location quotients on. So these are industries that have traditionally been stronger here. And we have high wages. So our wages are relatively high. That can be great. And it can also be a little bit of a disadvantage. And being part of Philadelphia region, close to other major metro areas, is another strength. Some weaknesses, and I'm sure you'll hear more from the real estate side from Mary Francis, is we tend to have slightly higher vacancies and costs in some of our nearby counties. I think the whole reason you're looking at this is what's happening with office parks. So there's that big question. We're pretty dependent on them. And our office vacancy rate is a little higher than some of our comparable counties or the region as a whole. And then Mary Francis generated these numbers, by the way. So, and then our cost per square foot for some different types of non-residential are a little higher in Chester County than they are elsewhere within the region as a whole. Housing costs can be a detriment sometimes for employers to attract people. We have seen some declines in employment of what have been traditionally stronger. A couple, looking over a 3-year period, a few that stand out as computer systems design. That's based on, I think, a lot on Cerner maybe pulling back. Electronic shopping is QVC, and greenhouse and nursery production, which is mushrooms. we don't have as much employment as you might expect in certain industries. If you look at a location quotient, something like restaurants or entertainment, for example. Healthcare is one we're not quite as high as you might expect. So that's just a quick overview of some things that are in that report. Next, what I wanted to touch on was just a few development trends. So this chart shows proposals that come into the county over time period, and it just gives you a good feel for how different it is now for non-residential square footage coming in from the late 90s through 2006. And these are total square footage coming into the county. So in 2020, we had a little over 2 million square feet proposed. 2000, it was over 10 million square, pretty dramatic difference there. And this shows the breakdown over the last 10 years of proposals. They don't necessarily get built, and what has been submitted, really since the Great Recession. And you can see some numbers there of what we've seen. And there's some anomalies, and just an example of something that doesn't get built. If you look at the 2017 row, in the industrial column, you'll see 1,040,687 square feet. Most of that was driven by a speculative proposal in New Garden Township that I think was over 900,000 square feet. And Mary Frances would know the exact number. That still hasn't gotten built.
Ryan, this page and the prior page, is that all greenfield square footage, or is it any like repurposing?
It's new construction. So
Yeah, okay.
If you were going to tear down and build new, that would be included. If you were just rehabbing a building, that would not fall into these numbers.
Okay.
And Mr. Leary, for the page you were just on, yeah, there we go. Is that reduction particularly from 2000 just a result of the county getting built out, or are there other factors that cause that reduction in the new square footages?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things getting built out, of changes. I think you would probably see a similar pattern across the region since the Great Recession. So I don't think it's unique to us, but that certainly is a factor. There was an era in the 90s and early 2000s when a ton of retail was getting built. Everyone recognized at the time that retail was getting overbuilt, and the amount of square footage per residence rose dramatically on retail space. And so there was a lot of retail in those numbers, but also offices. Industrial tended to be a little lighter.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And please ask questions. I'm just trying to go through this quick so I don't tie you up too long on the presentation and can take more questions. We have recently started tracking what really got built. And so these are the numbers over the last 4 years. We don't have the 2020 numbers yet. And this is based on Board of Assessment data, which isn't ready to analyze yet for 2020. But you can see what some of the numbers are. And the commercial does include office in this case. And, you see in 2019, not that big a year of stuff getting built or industrial. One point I'd like to make is going back to the prior screen. If you look at industrial column for 2020, these are proposals, so we have those numbers already. You can see the industrial numbers pretty high, 602,000. The reality is that is the biggest industrial number. If you take out that speculative one in 2017, it's the biggest industrial number over the last 10 years. We have seen a big upswing in industrial proposals coming through, and they're mostly additions to existing businesses. That is a very interesting trend over the last 4 or 5 months. And once again, I think Mary Frances will be able to give you some details and specific properties where that's happened. So this is a very interesting change, seeing this increase in industrial. And we just received a proposal for a little under 2 million square feet, which is large warehouse space at the Turnpike Interchange and Route 100. And that's the old, I think it's called Happy Days Farm, something like that, that Vanguard owned. That will most likely get built, and that's going to shoot up some numbers there. So the shift in industrial, I think, is a very interesting trend we are seeing that almost seems to be playing out because of the pandemic.
Are they building that to spec, or are they doing it on speculation to fill it later?
I heard it was spec, but someone else told me they thought one of the buildings was for maybe a distribution center for maybe Costco. But Mary Frances, you know if that's spec or if that's some of those are now settled?
There is definitely a distribution building among that million square feet, Brian, or 2 million square feet that came in. But we also are a finalist for a big, close to 400,000, 300 and change thousand square feet at Happy Days Farm for a foreign pharmaceutical company. And we had them in twice to look at the site, and we are one of the finalists in the region for that project as well. So,
Well, let's hope that happens. That would replace then potentially some of the warehouses.
correct.
Yeah. The developer on that's Nielsen, a developer I know from Montgomery County. He's focused mostly in Upper and Lower Providence townships. And then I think you probably had a chance to review the commercial landscape series looking at your agenda, but just to touch on that very quickly, this is a planning series that we did implementing the Vista 2025 plan, which is kind of looking at how are our business parks changing. And we actually looked at, we expanded it to also look at shopping centers, old brownfields land, and transit-oriented development. And I think one point that was being made was the boomers, and being a boomer, I didn't like seeing this line go down to zero, but that boomers were, millennials were becoming the dominant generation and had a little bit of different interests in what happened in their lives, and that wanting more amenities in the places they worked, whether they're actually in the place or within the facility. And so this is just some existing conditions for office. So I think some things that were recommended were on reinventing office parks. One is to organize businesses and market the strengths of the area. This could be through a business improvement district. It could be just pulling together the property owners. This is something West Whiteland's done a little bit to try to market properties and get interest in them. I think that's really been helpful for them. In Montgomery County, you've got the King of Prussia Business Improvement District, and they've done a lot of marketing. They've done a lot of site and amenity improvements, and someone's paying essentially taxes to this nonprofit to do it. And another interesting example is the City Ave one, which straddles Montgomery County and Philadelphia, where they've come together to create this organization that kind of supports the business community and the improvements in those areas. So that's one of the recommendations in commercial landscapes. When I was at Montgomery County, we did a study of for Horsham Township of some of their business parks, which is something you guys may want to look at. That study. It's probably on the Montgomery County Planning Commission website. And a developer was coming in and buying up the properties from, I think most of the properties were probably owned. Wasn't Brandywine, so it was probably Liberty when they were selling off their offices, and they're reinvesting into that community with certain amenities. And one thing that one thing that had started happening was under Liberty's ownership was they brought in, for instance, food trucks like a whole group of them on certain days of the week. And they're trying to provide some trail and green space amenities and some other things and some use change. So one of the big things happening is different uses being proposed in these business parks. And I know there was this proposal in East Goshen that was not well received. The only one I can think of that's been built so far in the county is the new apartment building in Great Valley. But there's a lot around the edges going on in Exton and other places where apartments are coming in. And just being more flexible in some of the regulations and improving public transportation are other recommendations. This last image is an image of a proposal for Great Valley that was going to create all these amenities and mixed uses and everything like that. It's, I think, a little bit dependent on attracting a key tenant or two. That didn't happen. This is a proposal by Liberty, and they just started, of course, selling off all of their office assets and really decided to focus on industrial. So that's a hopefully not too long overview of different things going on. And you can look up a lot of this information at chescoplanning.org. So I don't know if you want to ask questions now or after Mary Frances, or how do you guys want to proceed on this?
I say if you have your questions, ask them, because it's relevant information in our head right now.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if you have questions for Brian, this would be a good time. And I know one question I have, Brian, is I know there's a lot of information on those slides that we'd probably like to have in our toolkit. Is that something you could share and I could
Sure.
get to everybody?
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Appreciate it. There's some good stats in there.
Brian, do you know what the vacancy rate is for industrial in the county?
It is in that economy report, and I don't remember what it was. I'm thinking 8%. Do you remember, Mary Frances?
I think it was 8%, but 8% would have taken into account that one of the largest vacancies in the county is a 445,000 square foot space out in Lower Valley Road and Valley Township, and that is the former Quebecor building, which is currently now under contract. And so if you remove the 445,000 and change, the number would be somewhere in the vicinity of 4.7, 4.9% on the industrial product. Office is hovering around that 9 and 10% vacancy. That is under lease. So you have to remember, it's not necessarily the building occupancy. It's actually according to their lease documents. Does that answer your question?
So Mary Frances, what does that mean? That means if it's owned and occupied by the company, that's not coming into the figures. Is that right?
That's coming into the figures. We used all the buildings because we discussed
We
that.
did. That's right. Right. Okay.
So but I would say to you, if you take out a 450,000 square foot industrial building, which is probably one of our largest buildings we have in our inventory, you are now changing the vacancy rate.
All right.
So it would be fair to say that industrial is holding up better than office commercial.
Industrial, I just did a presentation for the managers, the Chester County the consortium of managers. What's the name of that group, Mark?
That's the one. It's the Chester County Managers Group. Yeah, something like that.
Okay. I know they use that consortium word anyway,
Mm.
but the industrial market is still the strongest part of the market in Chester County, and it continues to be. And unfortunately, because it is so strong, the rates that are out there now for buildings that are available are very high. And so that plays into what Brian said about our occupancy costs being very high. And so it's a challenge to get somebody on a large scale to come in and take over any industrial vacancy if the rate is so high.
I think just, the big question is how many people will return to the office or not. And, I'm reading a lot of, commentary on that. I think the leaning now is more towards people are going to be returning to the office, but in a hybrid way. And so it may not be as big a hit on offices as maybe we were thinking about 6 months ago. But, it's to be seen. It's really hard to know.
Yes. I'd like to make, Brian, are you trying to jump in there? I'm sorry, I saw you. make it-
Yeah, just one other question, Brian. For successful repurposing of office space and business parks, I mean, what do you see as successful uses are that come in there that weren't there before? It looks like residential seems to come up. I mean, is that really the driver, or are there other uses also that contribute to success?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, the residential is being driven by, the property owners who are looking for alternative use at times. So I think it's a mixed bag on that.
I would,
I think it's, the jury's still out on this. I don't think, people really know enough on which ones are going to really trigger it. I do think no matter what, supportive commercial uses are good to have. So restaurants, banks, daycare centers, business support type things are very good to have. I think if you're going to have a lot of industrial in your park, then, the residential becomes, to me, more questionable. I think if you're going for a park that is more office mixed use type character, then I think residential is kind of a nice amenity for that.
Thank you.
I also think, Brian, that Brian had that adding to your amenity base to attract the younger workers who wanted those amenities close to them.
Right.
That's some of what he was describing in his presentation. And some of the uses are for those, because we're going to have the hybrid use. That means the parking ratio is not going to be quite as needed. We've been having 4.5 per car parking for an office building for years. It's sort of been at 4 per 1,000 parking, right, has been the common standard. And we're not going to need that any longer. And so what do? And Brian talked about some of those uses with the pop-up food truck amenity. If the amenity base isn't there, then you bring it in. Goshen and Brandywine are getting a nice mix, but there's not exactly a lot of healthcare. And there certainly isn't a charter school like Collegium Charter over there in the Oaklands Park. That is another challenge. It's taking up an awful lot of the vacancy, but Oaklands is actually has a very low vacancy number at the moment. So again, trying to be open to the uses that you attract and being able to build on them and give them the things that aren't there currently.
Yeah, and just on Oaklands, they do have an apartment proposal there. Could even be under construction now. So that'll join Great Valley's, another one that has an apartment in it when that's done. And I believe there may also, in addition to the charter school, there may be a assisted living going into that place.
They're both in there. The apartments are being leased, and the assisted living facility had signs out that they're leasing now. So,
yep.
And those are both in West Whiteland, so I'm very familiar with those.
That's right. Yeah. I didn't realize apartments were up and being leased. Wow.
Yeah.
I got to get out and about. I got to get out of my house sometimes now.
I stayed away from that area because it was so crazy with all the construction.
Oh, it was nutty.
I got to get over there and take a look at it too, Brian.
There's also
and we will be extending the Chester Valley Trail into that business park also.
Yep. It goes
That
right
is, if it hasn't gone to bid yet, it will next month. So yeah.
Right.
So I mean, also,
Yeah, part of that Oaklands, they had to show connection for that new apartments to that proposed extension of the trail. That was part of our requirements to make them do that. So, but anyway.
Yeah. So some interesting changes there. I'd like to go back, Brian, and try and clean up that 1,687,000 square feet in 2017 that was planned and approved for New Garden Township.
Right.
That was a 54-acre agricultural business park that we were going to create an industrial park, and it was 990,000 square feet of industrial buildings. It was across the street from the New Garden Airport. It is planned and approved. It was agreed upon by the township that the township would do smaller industrial buildings on the airport parcel that they own. New Garden Township owns that airfield. And that the larger industrial users would be built on what was the former Modern Mushrooms land site there, right on Newark Road. So 990,000 square feet of industrial planned and approved in New Garden, right off of Route 1.
Yeah, and the most recent I've heard on that is there's a new building maybe going in there where they do take mushroom, use mushrooms somehow to lab to create like vitamins and other things. So so it looks like that might move forward.
And they won't, that won't interrupt their bagging operation, Brian. So they'll be able to maintain that bagging operation on that parcel. They
Right.
have to call for them to remove that and place it somewhere else.
Mhm.
So some challenging stuff. I know Brian got jumped off and I jump in. My name is Mary Francis. I'm with the Economic Development Council. My background is in real estate. I did 12 years of commercial sales and leasing for Jackson Cross, a mid-market commercial real estate firm out of King of Prussia. My territory was Conshohocken to Kennett Square, I tended to say, and I had a nice background in real estate and was able to translate that over to the Economic Development Council about 8 years ago when I became their business development person. I almost exclusively focus on location services and do a lot of real estate work with companies that are coming into the region or companies who are existing here today and need to expand. I'm more recently added to the West Whiteland Planning Commission. That's how I got to meet Mark, and that's why I got drafted for this presentation tonight.
What are they, insane in West Whiteland? Come on, Mark and Mary Francis. Jeez.
Yeah. We're stacking the deck over there. I'm
Yeah, I'll
telling you.
tell you.
I got a great team, you know, they're great.
All right, so what I talked to Mark about some of this is that I wanted to sort of show you some of the data.
There's a question on the phone. Do we see that?
Oh, I don't see it. Okay, that's Mark's driving.
Sorry, I don't see a hand raised either.
I see the hand raised. Thank you, Brian.
If you have a question, go ahead, state your name and your question, please.
Hi, it was Christina. I just wanted to chime in about the very interesting conversation about the increase in industrial and distribution demand. I just found it interesting because I've been reading lately a lot about Amazon's plans, and they are actually one of the largest employers in the country. They increased the number of employees that they hired last year by 50%. And they have very definite plans, which I think factor into what you all were just discussing. They have plans, and there's a number of articles out there that you can read about, but they have very definite plans to open small local delivery hubs in suburbs all across the United States. I think the last numbers that I saw were that they wanted to open 1,000 to 1,500 of these. And the reason that they're doing that is because they are determined to continue meeting the 2-day delivery promise that they have to Prime members. And they're in very tight competition with Walmart and Target. And so these small delivery hubs where Amazon drivers can run in and pick up their packages and be very close to the consumers that are on their route, this could factor in significantly if you think about it in Chester County. If you go into any Whole Foods, you're going to see right away that a significant amount of space has been reallocated just for Prime delivery. So this is a trend that's increasing. It's a trend that has plans that are on the books and are already being publicized in the business literature out there. And it definitely falls in line with the shift of increased demand for distribution centers while decreasing demand for employee occupied space. So I just wanted to say that to not factor in the Amazon factor, I think would be overlooking what could be a very good opportunity for space available in East Goshen.
You know what size they're looking for?
Well, they were looking at sizes like the size of like a JCPenney store. because J.C. Penney's are going out of business. So some of the information that they were talking about was repurposing that type of store.
Well, that's probably more like in the 40,000 square foot range.
Not very
I don't think our buildings really fit that.
Most of ours are 40 or better.
There is some discussion about that relative to the last mile distribution, they call it. And about 2 years ago, we had an interest in last mile distribution center for Mark up on off of Phoenixville Pike, up by Barry Bombers, where we were talking about the electronic sign going on 202.
Mhm,
What's the name of that business park up there?
Yep.
I'm in the township and I can't remember, and I'm still in economic.
Oh, that's, we call it the
Dunwoody.
Dunwoody and Morstein and,
Yep.
yeah, in there, yep.
So before we heard about the real estate, the residential real estate play for that space, there was a play for Amazon to come in and put it up there, and it didn't take. That doesn't mean to say that it won't take in some of these other spots. And Christine's right, that last mile distribution thing is absolutely out there. What I would say is that we haven't had any calls in the economic development office to investigate any of them, but they certainly are out there. So again, when I was talking to Mark, and we were trying to focus on Brandywine and Goshen Business Park, I wanted to try and understand what the vacancy rate was. Now, remember, you're all driving by it every day, and the parking lots are vacant. That doesn't necessarily talk about the extent that the lease has expired and that the building is sitting vacant by itself. Mark, I did not send these to my computer that I like to use for these. Would you bring up the map that just shows them how I drew? I used my drawing tool to capture the buildings. It should say map of vacancy analysis.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have access to that
Your emails?
on my home computer.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, see, I can't use my office computer because then you just see a blank desk in my.
No problem. I'll send it to the team as I get back. So I used a drawing tool and I sent it over to Mark and I said, did I get it right? Did I get the right quadrants? And he said, yes, just remember, one side of Airport Road is east, the other side's west. And so I did the drawing tool and I came up with the vacancy analysis. And you're going to be very surprised to know that and I'll send these to you guys, so don't worry, and Ruth and gals, I'll send these to you so you can see them. But it states that there's about 39 buildings, 39 properties, and you have a better sense of that because you already know the companies that are in these buildings, for about a total of about 2.5 million square feet. And of the 2.5 million square feet, there's really only vacancy of about 166,000 square feet. So space that's sitting vacant that does not have a lease on it today is only about 166,000 square feet. And it's a little over 2.5% of the total vacancy. Now that's including all the flex buildings and all the office buildings that are in the park. And you can take a look at that and you can call me out. And I welcome the calling out. I'm okay. I have a tough skin. If you say to me, you missed a building, then I'll rerun this and send it to the team again. But I also give
Mary Frances,
Mhm.
did you consider the vacant parcels?
Sure. When you take them in, you take in every address, you take in the whole center, and you take in every building. If you say all buildings, you take everything.
Okay, so you're not taking into account that we have several parcels over there that are just completely vacant. They have no structures on them at all.
No vacant land, and I didn't take
Okay.
proposed. What I took was existing or under
Underutilized.
renovation.
Yeah. Thank you.
So all of that space is listed there, and it's listed at about $15 triple net, which means it doesn't include the taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance. And what's that going to do to the rent? That's going to add another $450 to $550 to that rate, which is going to put that rate up in that $20 or low $20 range. So the office rents at $25 and the industrial rents at about $10 or $12 are going to average out right in that $18 a foot range. That's, of course, office and industrial. Now, what's the biggest number in your vacancy? The biggest vacancy currently, right now, sitting out there waiting for somebody is 905 Airport Road. 905 Airport Road is a total of 127,000 square feet. Right now, it has a 50% I'm sorry, 50,000 square feet of it is occupied. Well, I'm here to tell you the hot news is that Tesla was in the building on Friday for 2 hours to take the entire building down as an educational facility. Elon Musk went to University of Pennsylvania and has a heart for the region and would like to put an educational training facility in Airport Road. And you say, well, why do you think it's Airport Road? Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of last week, they are working with a national brokerage firm, CB Richard Ellis, and they were looking at Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. And each of the locations were given 30 minutes. Sometimes they went into a building and immediately left because they said, this doesn't suit, it's a waste of our time. They spent 2 hours at 905 Airport Road. And we're heard to say, and I quote, this is almost a turnkey situation for us. So
I mean,
I
it was-
received the call from the broker, who is the listing broker for 905 Airport Road, who was jumping up and down saying, we have to do something. And so at that time, I placed a call to the Office of International Business and to Harrisburg's Department of Community and Economic Development and spoke to David Briel, the new executive director, and said to him, we need to get Secretary Davin to write a letter to say, we want you, we want you, we want you, and we will do everything we can to get you, and say that that is from Pennsylvania in general. But I also need to call Mr. Cagle, our county manager, and ask him to ask the commissioners for a letter of support to say the very same thing. We also have an email that we want to put out after we get to county officials to George Fiore and Joy Gates Black at the Delaware County Community College to say, we need your partnership, and to say that they are also delighted at the opportunity for Tesla to be located in our market. They would bring with them 65 to 75 new jobs and be a creative opportunity for students to become technicians in this new technology, which students would come from everywhere. They give scholarships to kids in Boston, and they give scholarships to kids in Florida. And I say kids because they're anybody who's like, the average age is between 18 and 25 years old of these technicians that they're graduating with these certifications. So if we took that 127,000 square feet out of your vacancy analysis, you would be significantly lower. So you're not as damaged as you think. That doesn't mean that in a year from now, there won't be more sublet space on the market, which this also takes into account. And there won't be pure vacancy because those buildings have found other ways to succeed. But for right now, that's where it is, a picture in time. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. So the other thing I talked to Mark about was that when the county first was experiencing COVID-19, we were asked to go out and do some surveying. And you have said in your plan that you'd like to do some surveys of these businesses. And that's pretty much what I do for a living. I speak to companies and find out what their pain points are and try to find solutions for them that are either in place or need to be brought in place for them, whether it's training money, whether it's financing opportunities, whether it's finding workforce, whether it's help with talking to their municipality. That's my job. So I wanted to share with Mark the first two surveys that we used, and he has the copies of them as well. And if I was better technology, I would have showed it. But Brian, you made me look bad. You look so good with your presentation. Anyway, I'll send it to you. What I would like to encourage you to do is look at these surveys and find questions that the 10 questions you want asked, and find a way to ask them consistently. Because if you ask a bad question without the options that they need, you're not going to have metrics. You're not going to have a way to measure these. So look through the surveys, find, number of employees, general questions. You probably already have that information. If you're doing Dun & Bradstreet on any of these companies, you can find that. But to understand what their pain points are is very essential. And I'm happy to share the written one that we use, but what I shared with you were the questions and then the summary responses, so you could see what the answers were. And I think you'll say these top questions are the ones that we want. And if I pull up an example, I'll go to my my question. One of them talks about like what category best describes your industry sector. Brian gave you those industry sectors that we have a large variance of, right? That if you were at 1.0, you're at the national average. If you were above 1.0, you have a higher concentration in those. And so we list the 12 or 13, maybe 14, Brian, because we have them now according to Vista, and we're trying to keep them the same. So if you use the similar categories, you'll be able to use a county data versus a township data, and you'll be able to make cross comparisons with your data. So that's just one question. That's real general, but that would be one of the things you might want to ask. They ask about what was the estimate of your change in revenue. If you want to ask that question, that'll be able to tell you how your future spaces are going to be, whether they're going to be vacated or not, right? If their revenues, heading down on a downward trend, then there's more likelihood that they're in trouble. When they talk about layoffs or permanent closures or what you see in the next time period, next horizon. If you want to ask about a specific time period, they ask what personnel or hiring decisions have you adjusted? I think that, and they give you plenty of choices to help you get some solid answers. And I have all of those surveys at my disposal, and I'm happy to work with you on finding 10 really good questions that would really answer what the community wants to hear. But remember, we have to make it measurable and we have to make it able to be reportable. So the metrics are important. And I'm sorry that you can't see them, because then you'd have a better sense, but I am going to send them to you. Mark, I'll send them again to Mark and he can push it out. If you
That's
copy
great.
me,
Thank
Mark,
you.
then I'll answer any questions that anybody has. I'm sorry, Brian, go ahead.
No, this is wonderful. That's exactly what we need. We already had taken a stab at some questions, but I think your point to making sure that certainly the questions are similar to the county, but then the parameters which we're scoring are exactly the same. That'll help quite a bit.
So too, Brian. I think so too. And that we really worked with the County Planning Commission on this. We put it everywhere we could. It went on the Planning Commission's website. It was our Chambers of Commerce put it out. We gathered data from all over the county, and that made it more relevant. And I think if you can try and find ways to put it out to the community as many times as you can, or as many times as, I mean, if you're going to make personal outreach, I'd love to go to a couple of the companies that we certainly can't get into. I think the parks have a lot going for them. With Teva, you don't know how many times we tell people Teva is the national headquarters for Teva is located in our county, and it's the head of their R&D. Who would have thought about that? Right next to the global e-commerce company of QVC. So, I mean, I say to you all the time, like there are great things going on, but I think to Brian's point, we need to strengthen the existing tenant base we have today. We need to offer the tenants things that they don't have already and try and keep them in the park. And we need to find ways to add other uses to existing land or to sites that can be redeveloped. It certainly is a lot less expensive to rehab a building than it is to build one ground up, as you all know. And then we have to deal with our planning commissions again, right, Mark?
Do.
Just a comment on the redoing buildings. I think that's one trend that we certainly saw over the last 4 or 5 years. Was we weren't seeing a lot of new office proposals, but you certainly saw a lot of aging office buildings being sometimes stripped down to the steel, depending on the building. But a lot of that happened around the county. particularly like for different township area.
But we don't want to mess with stormwater management. So if we can do the upgrades, if we can, right? If we can go through a Six Sigma, evaluation of a manufacturing facility and retool it from the inside, Acera Precision just did this in East Goshen. I mean, so, they didn't have to expand. They just added another shift, right? And put a lot more automation into their process, so if you see that kind of a change, then it makes great sense because it doesn't take long to do it because you're doing everything under roof. But it certainly is the path of least resistance from the development side.
Just another quick trend to mention was that we have seen, we don't see a ton of them, but we'll see 1 or 2 a year of office projects that are only adding parking. And that's, where they're doing more people on the same square footage. Now, what the pandemic will do to that trend is tough to know, but it was trending down to, around 200 square feet per person, where it had been at 250 or 300 for a while. So we don't know what's going to happen with that trend, but we actually saw one of those come in during the pandemic, an office that was only adding parking to fit more people into the building. So kind of interesting to see that.
Great. Well, any other questions for Brian or Mary Frances?
Mary Frances, the Tesla prospect that you were talking about before, you said they were going to have, I guess, students coming into that facility if they took it. Were they concerned at all about where they're going to house the students? No.
No, there wouldn't necessarily, wouldn't be a little mini university. It would be, students would come in for their, 6 to 9 month course. My neighbor across the road, Nick, he graduated from East High School 2 years ago, and he got a scholarship to go down to the Acura training facility down in one of the Carolinas. And he was gone for 9 months and came back with a certificate and started working at $43,000 a year. An 18-year-old kid who's been tinkering around in cars. He's tinkered around with mine a couple times. Great kid. And I love him dearly. And if he heard that Tesla was coming, I think he'd be lining up to try and get in there. So these students will come from various parts of the country, but I don't think that's a drawback at all, especially since we have a college and university town right beside us. I think that'll be actually one of the attractions. One of the problems in the park, however, and I didn't, we're always talking about the good stuff and the glory. What about the negative? The negative has always been that we can't get a direct connection or a loop, right? Some of the commercial companies, corporate companies, band together to try and get a van to come from either the Exton train station or the Paoli train station to get that regional rail connection. And I think that's one of the things we're going to have to solve for Tesla. We're going to have to be able to say to them, this is how you do it, right? This is how you find a way to get that public transportation connection. And it is a drawback, but it isn't unsurmountable. I think there's a way to do it, but,
Mary Frances, how do you do it?
Well,
So what we did with Lavazza, and before Lavazza it was Mars Drinks, and TMAC was our partner.
That's correct.
And, that's the Transportation Management Association of Chester County. We have a good partnership with them. And so there are ways to do it. And we were sad to see that loop go of SEPTA, but there just wasn't ridership. But that's always something we could always get SEPTA back. Take a
Who pays for it? Is it public funds or is it the companies are funding?
The companies
the loop?
themselves actually let them do it from a prepaid before their taxes. It's one of the things they could pay into to get that loop to bring them back to work.
Okay.
Okay.
There is a current proposal for, it's happening in Coatesville. So that's a combination of government money and a corporation paying for it. In this case, it's Urban Outfitters, and TMAC was running a shuttle from Coatesville to the Urban Outfitters warehouse in Lancaster County. So that's a combination of two both providing funds. One other thing, when housing came up, we don't know what's going to happen with hotels. It's going to be very interesting to see. And, that it's possible that some of them kind of morph into long-term extended stay type places for things like students at Tesla, for example.
Well, we were very fortunate to get Mars Drinks to put their world training center here. And I think we could definitely work together with you, Mary Frances, and try to put our heads together and see what we can do to encourage Tesla to stay.
We were stirring it up at the state today. Trust me, we're trying to get people to sit up and pay attention so we can let them know we're really interested in them coming here. So I hope to have a package of demographics and letters and things like that back to them by the end of the week. It's not going through me, it's going through their broker, but I will keep you informed, Mark, as always. I'll be seeing you.
I know our board would be definitely interested to know that and lend whatever support they have, with our legislators here in this area as well. All right. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you coming. I think it was really valuable. I don't see any other hands raised. Do I miss anybody? But at this point, you're welcome to stay if you like, but we've got some just basic business to take care of. So I don't think you need it. Brian, Mike, do you guys think we need to keep Mr. O'Leary and Ms. McGarity for the rest of our meeting? Ed, anybody?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
And, happy to come back, and as you're developing ideas and, have further questions, feel free to reach out. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I'm
I'll probably bounce a few things off you over the next 9 months.
Yeah, happy to do it.
And I'm
Great.
happy to provide any of those vacancy reports at any time and any snapshot, Mark. So if the team would
Okay,
like them monthly, or if you'd like
Great.
to have some help with the outreach, I would love to tag along and see where we can help.
be great.
Okay?
I'll be.
Yeah, it's great you guys are doing this. All towns should be doing this type of effort. So
Thanks so much. Bye now.
thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, well, I think that kind of hit the mark of what we were looking for. I know it was helpful for me. Hopefully it was for you guys.
Yeah, that was great.
Next item on the agenda is task force organization. So we need some leadership, chair and vice chair. So I'll open it up to nominations. Anyone interested in?
I'll nominate Jeff. He was interested, I think, in chairman potentially.
And Jeff is not here, so.
I'll second.
If that's true, I mean, yeah, you could do that to him. I'm sure he'd be.
Brian, you're pretty into it too, right? You should get on this, shouldn't you?
Sure.
What do you think, bud?
I mean, do we want to have, does it matter? Do we want to have futurist and planning as the chair, vice versa, whatever? Does that make sense? Or
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, John was so quick to nominate Jeff. I think we should nominate John.
I'll nominate John.
There you
I'll
go.
take the vice chair.
second that?
So we could call them co-chairs and you guys can duke it out. I don't know. It's up to you.
No, put Jeff on the top. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope he's not upset about that.
Yeah, what a great surprise.
Mr.
That's what
Chairman.
happens when you don't come to the meeting.
You gotta show up.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor for chairman of Jeff O'Donnell. And please signify yay or
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey,
any nays? Oh, hearing none, it's unanimous. And second motion for John Stipe as vice chair.
yeah.
Yay.
Approval by yay.
Yeah.
And nays? Hearing none, unanimous? Okay. All right, so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Stipe, since you're now the de facto chair for the evening. With our next item for minutes, you have your January minutes here.
I've only got one change in there, line 35 and 36. I'm not a realtor.
I saw that and I was like, I don't think he's a realtor.
Real estate investor, but not realtor.
Okay, real estate investor. Got it.
Any other changes or deletions?
No.
I had
I'm
none.
good.
Make a
Okay.
motion to accept the minutes as written then? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes accepted.
All right. And then what I've done here, John, is I just put basically everything you had the last time, the staff memo, the objective, task, deliverables, and a bunch of background materials that Rick and I thought would be helpful.
Yeah, look through the deliverables. The only thing, probably the next thing they'd be going over would be the survey, but we're gonna have the input from
Yeah.
Mary Francis.
Yeah.
So that we're probably gonna wanna potentially hold off on until we get the additional survey questions.
Do we? I know we're up against a tight timeline and I don't want to be the guy that asks for more homework here, but if we are trying to push this and we are, I think our goal for today was to get the kind of get the questionnaire set. If we're going to wait, is there any way we could expedite that, or do we need to wait until the next meeting to go through it and pull that together?
Well, we can go ahead and go through what Brian had provided. I had one item of input on that. I don't know if anybody else did.
I had a little bit of input, but I mean, yeah, that I was just thinking if we're going to get
Probably go ahead and start with what Brian's got here.
okay.
Well, yeah, and I thought, I mean, could we, between the next cycle, I could work with what Mary Francis sends and try to, consolidate that into one list and maybe standardize the questions, as she said.
Okay.
Is that all right? And then for the next meeting, then we can, I can share that for the meeting and then we can have that discussion during the next call.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
only
but there-
I
You guys want to go, because I don't know if you saw my email, but like just to kind of get a feel for how hard it was going to be to reach these people, I like reach out to a couple people I know to get to like the big guys or big boys over there. And like, so QVC, the dude's like real cool. He's like, he'll meet like this week. He's like, as soon as you're ready to go, and I kind of like threw out your sample, Brian, just like, look, like, I'm just kind of like doing some feelers out there. These are like similar type questions, blah, blah, blah. We'll probably have something more concrete and like get the team together. So like that he'll meet whenever in person. And then CTDI, they're like not as cool, but they said they'll like do a virtual thing, you know what I mean? So I think like if we can just get on the same page and like they're primed, ready to go. And then the little ones will probably have to just split up and go try to do what I did, either with that like initial outreach like letter, you know what I mean? Like Mike was saying, I just don't know who's in the office, you know what I mean? Who's going to get it?
Are these intended to be mailed surveys or something you go and physically?
I was thinking you just make contact, however you make contact, and like, if we split it up and then like to be realistic, maybe we get a hold of like half of them or 2/3 or whatever, you know what I mean? And then do our survey questions and then kind of take that data back as soon as possible to like make our recommendations, in the next, whatever it is, 7-8 months.
Well, I was thinking that we probably should do the survey questions first, written, whether it's mailed or it's sent by email, get that information back and then have the in-person meetings. But because we may
Right.
have questions that will arise based upon their answers to the survey.
I get it. From what I'm learning, it's just like, it may be harder to get to, unless Mark's like, pretty connected, which he may be. It's like, it might be a little hard to get to the right people or to get a hold of anybody, with the climate and stuff like that. But either one, or do them both at the same time and see what happens.
Yeah,
What were your
if you're having
thoughts,
a hard
Brian?
time getting the right person, let me know, and I could probably, I've dealt with almost every one of them at some point since I've been here, so I should be able to get you on the phone with one of the top folks.
Brian, what were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think we thought that we would distribute the survey so people can see it, and then
Mhm.
either, we get the answers back, but definitely have a conversation with them. So
Yeah.
about the specific answer. So probably good to
Okay.
see the answers first, so we kind of know
And
how
then
to
talk.
tailor the conversation. Yeah.
Brian, the only thought I had on your survey questions were to combine number 1 and number 5 together and into one real estate / occupancy costs, because rent price, it's just dependent upon what their perspective is. Are they a tenant or are they a landlord? Or are they the owner of the property?
Which two questions? You said 1 and
Which
5.
Actually, under number
Under number
4,
4,
you
right?
had the breakdown
Oh,
between
okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
1 and 5, rent price
Sure.
and real estate costs. And I just think it should just be one question, real estate / occupancy costs.
got it.
yeah, probably a lead-in question. Do you own the building or do you lease the building? And then it would
Yeah.
Yeah.
spur your questions one way or the other.
Well, I think we see from the one document that was sent out, I mean, we see who the owners are, and in most
Yeah,
cases,
that's
they don't
true.
match.
That's
You know.
true, yeah. Although sometimes they are the same people, they just have a real estate business that holds the holdings and they keep
Yeah.
the corporation separate.
Ed, you had some other questions or input for this?
Yeah, I did. The own lease was one of them. The other one was in your number 3. What industry is your business in? I think we have some other, if not other industries, maybe expand that list. I was
Yeah.
thinking kind of, it might line up with what was in Mr. O'Leary's presentation.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, I'm taking notes on the back of sheets, so give me a minute here to flip through here. I think you had agricultural, for commercial, office, hotel, retail, other, industrial and institutional, maybe use those. And then, maybe have a kind of a sub breakout there of what is the use. So, is there office space within your complex versus, manufacturing, and maybe a rough percentage based on square footage, and just try and get a little more breakout on that metrics, just to see, if someone has 100,000 square foot building and 10% of it is office space or less, we need to, I think that would help with us in decision making and where we go with our recommendations.
Makes sense.
No, that's a good point, because like Synthes, the Jabil facility, that's almost all manufacturing. So
Yeah.
that'd be a good example of, why they don't have the parking, or they have more parking needs than someone else.
Yep.
Actually, they probably have multiple uses there depending upon which property you're talking about.
Right, because Synthes has a huge office building that's just strictly offices, and that's where the headquarters is. And they have the manufacturing facility, they have the training facility, and they've got the tech facility. So
So are they under Johnson and Johnson, Mark? Are they?
Yeah,
I
they
couldn't.
are.
I couldn't get a hold of them. They were like too big.
yeah, I can try to get you in the right ballpark with that. I can help you with that, Mike.
All right.
Okay, anything else for the survey questions on?
Yeah, so there were a couple more that just kind of popped up as we were listening to the presentations today, but in, maybe something to to talk about, and this could come later, but maybe a question around what their willingness to work with other business parks would be, or I'm sorry, other tenants would be. So I think one of the things that Mr. O'Leary was talking about was the marketing and getting the tenants kind of together as to form some type of marketing group and really promote the business park. And then, you know, we talk about proximity to restaurants. What about, you know, is parking an issue? And I think Mr. McGarity was saying that, you know, we're the parking constraints, particularly if we go to, if we see things go to a hybrid use, you know, do we have too much parking? And maybe if there's anything that they would like to see from what we have in parking. I don't know. Again, this is stuff that I just
Yep.
kind of thought of today. So
We might want to look
Parking
at
in
the
the
zoning
parking,
to
yeah.
reduce the
Correct.
parking requirement.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to give us more work.
Yeah, because we have a minimum amount of parking that somebody has to have.
Yep.
Space. Yeah.
Depending on the use, you know, there's a minimum parking standard for the size of the building and the use. And
Yep.
we've tweaked it a couple times over the years that I've been here, and you know, it was the same trend. It was, we don't need 5 spaces per 1,000, we need 4. But the challenge was always that, just like Brian said, is that it looks like the trend might be going the other way now. Instead of 250 square feet per employee, we're down to about 200. So they're squeezing more people into these places. You know, we didn't want to have our, you know, a telecommunications, you know, bunch of people on the floor just laid out and elbow to elbow.
Yeah.
They need a lot more parking. So
Yeah. And I think that's really all I have. I think this is a great start for the questions.
So Brian, should we just point blank kind of ask, like, is there anything the township, like, or is there anything the business park lacks that, you know, we could provide, you know, that would entice you to stay here? You know, something direct along those lines. I mean, I understand that, like, we don't, you know, can't build them whatever they want, but like at the
Yeah.
same time, I was just kind of was thinking, maybe get all those geese out of there, Mark. I walked through there with my kids the other day. I don't know where these geese come from. They're like all over the place.
they're called resident Canadian geese, and they fly south and they don't fly north.
Yeah.
They're right in this
Yeah.
bubble, and
All
they're safe here. There's aren't there, and so yeah, it does stink in certain spots, but
Yeah.
think
They got
that's
a
your
ball field. They
question
have
from
also-
just from a
Yeah.
staff perspective, as far as amenities, your question may be, what amenities are your employees seeking close by to a workplace? And, you know, if it's something that, you know, we can help facilitate, or if it's a recreation program, or if it's some kind of a food truck festivals or something like that, we can capture that, and then we can move forward and determine how we can accommodate those things.
Well, also under the Commerce Commission before, we always pretty much stated that East Goshen is business friendly. If you need something, come ask us for it.
Mhm.
Like,
We're
does the
here to help.
YMCA give them any kind of discount or anything? Is there any kind of tie there, or is that something out of our jurisdiction or whatever?
I know there are some health and wellness activities in some of the organizations. CTDI has a real big one. I don't know if they partner with the Y, but I know that they have their own internal programs. But that's something we could definitely reach out about. Why don't I ask our rec director to see if he can find out what, if any, corporate outreach they do for our local corporate parks. Put that on my to-do list.
Also, Mark, does Christine have a question? Her hand's still up.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why I cannot see these hands.
Hi, thank you. was-
Sorry.
Okay, we skipped over the public comment period in the agenda. Do you want me to just wait until the end?
No, if you've got something added in now, whatever question you have.
Okay. So this was for non-agenda items. I was just following along on the list of properties that are over at the corporate park. And on this list, it says that the only vacant property is that 905 Airport Road that Mary Frances was talking about. Is that correct, Mark, that that's the only vacant building?
As far as has vacancy, yes, as a building, yes. I mean, some of these buildings are not occupied right now because of what's going on. But yes, the at least 2/3 of that building, the tenants have moved out for sure.
Okay. So I was incredibly excited by what she was talking about with the potential Tesla prospect there.
Yeah.
So it sounds like she has to get some information for them on Friday. If there's anything that the township could possibly do to assist her, I would hopefully maybe we can get that done. I know it's a tight time frame, but
We made that offer, Christine.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, the other thing was that if for some reason the property does not get used by Tesla, I was thinking this weekend of things that could be used that have an increasing demand that are not being met. And so some of those things are, if you think about education, right now, Westchester Area School District is really struggling with classroom space. It's the main barrier to them being able to reopen in-person learning. That is obviously a short-term need, but it's something that perhaps, a short-term agreement with one of these property owners could assist the Westchester Area School District with. The other thing is that you are aware, of course, that they spent a lot of money building the new Greystone School. And that is because they have a large problem that they have to meet, which is increasing student numbers based on residential housing that is being built. I was part of the redistricting committee last year looking at the numbers, and almost every school is at capacity, even with shifting students around. So that's a long-term need that's going to continue. Maybe opening satellite locations for some of these classrooms could assist them. I'm just throwing out ideas for meeting some demands that are out there. The other thing just to consider is the Westchester School District's fiber program is very robust. It's being used heavily right now. It's different from their hybrid program where some students attend certain days and then some students go in person and some students stay home. Fiber is entirely remote, and their resource center is currently in the Fugate Library and can only accommodate 8 students at a time. So that could also be an opportunity for them to lease some space to expand that program.
Well, I guess we could cover all that, Christine, if the supervisors wanted us to send a letter to the Westchester Area School District telling that we're open to that towards that type of use potentially. But that's really up to the supervisors to decide.
Well, it's just something that you could add to the mix of things that are possible uses when you're considering these things. The other thing is, if you think about another increasing need right now at this moment is the Chester County Department of Health might be interested in renting some space for community-based vaccinations or testing because that's going to be needed. So just something that could also be thrown out there. And it's just something that could help these property owners get some rental income at a time when they might have, they might be looking at losing tenants.
Well, our focus is the long term, not the short term. Anything else? Anything else, Christine?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we're all done with the survey questions unless anybody else had anything else to add. Okay. Under the list that was marked confidential for the contacts, Mark, and also for the, what was that? The rental or the real estate taxes. I don't believe this included any of the businesses in the executive center.
Yeah.
And that's in the business park. We should be including them, shouldn't we, Mark?
Yeah, I don't see any of them in here. You're right. I mean, no, because,
Okay.
yeah,
The contact's really not so important right now, but for getting that information from the Berkheimer, we probably should send them a revised list with that included.
and that's
Yeah, I
the
think-
list that. Yeah, so corporate parks, yep, Goshen Corporate Park West. Yeah, I mean, those guys are in the BP. I'm not sure why Rick didn't have Amanda put that in here, but
But I think we should include them with the survey questions too, because I think they might provide some good input for how viable that facility is now.
yep,
Yeah, we could. I think we left them out when we were looking at the whole area at first, just because there's such small footprints individually, and
yeah.
if one of them goes out of business, it's not like we
You
were
don't
focused
know.
on the buildings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
But
mean, we
there's a lot
should
of business.
definitely, yeah, there's a lot. So we should add them for sure for the tax review, just so we have a complete understanding. And we could send them the survey. Maybe we don't have a conversation with them, and we get their information and don't spend time, because there's probably as many contacts in that corporate building as there are in the whole rest of the business park.
Or more.
Well, I
Yeah.
think,
Probably about 40 businesses in there.
Yeah.
Mark, doesn't
so-
Mrs. Hicks own like 7 of the units or something in there?
Yeah, but she leases them to a bunch of businesses. Yeah.
But she could provide us some good information about how she's doing with renting them out and the demand for those type of units.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask her. I know she's on the executive committee for the Goshen Executive Center, so we could definitely
Also,
have a conversation with her. Maybe we can invite her to the next meeting to just give us a kind of a rundown on the executive center.
I guess to find out from her whether there's any thoughts long-term for the farm property there.
Well, she's not an owner of any of the farm properties.
Oh, she's not? Okay. Who is the owner of that?
Her husband, son, and brother-in-laws.
Okay.
You might have some influence on Mark. No?
We can ask her. You can ask.
Okay. I think that's all I had. Am I missing something, Mark?
Just get back to. So I can just give you an update on where we are with. Ricky had sent a memo to our contact over at Keystone, Rose, and I forget her last name. I think there was an email in here to her. So she finally did get back to him. I think it was on Friday with a lot of good information. We'll pull that together for you for your next meeting. And obviously your packet was already done, so cram it in there. So a bunch of good stuff on EIT and that type of thing for you. So we'll analyze that and put it into format for you guys to review. I think that's pretty much it, guys.
Okay.
Got a quick
There's nothing to
question.
do on the zoning map, right, Mark?
No, I just gave that for your own, your own information.
Okay.
I have a quick question for you, Mark. You know, one of the things Mr. McCarron said was, you know, they talked about, or maybe it was Mr. O'Leary, about coordinating food trucks or getting food trucks out to the business parks to kind of provide a little benefit. Who would coordinate something like that? Is that something that we could actually do and maybe set up a schedule and rotate them? Or is that something that we would kind of more ask the business park tenants to work on? And does that become a zoning issue? How does that work?
No, I think if they come to their own property, it's not an issue for us. Obviously, you know, if they're going to be in the township street, you know, on Enterprise Drive during the middle of the day, it's not going to be an issue. But typically, these companies organize those types of things on their own.
Yeah.
Now, we could help with the contacts we have, and Jason has a host of food truck vendors he uses for all the park events. So that would be a good place for us to get involved and say, here, we have relationships with these folks. They've come and they've done great work at, you know, 2,000 people at the spring thing and the fall festival, whatever it was. So I can talk with Jay about something like that if that was something the parks were interested in.
Okay, so
That's
that
probably
would be
something
more
to-
like, go
That's
ahead,
probably
Joe.
more something to push after the pandemic's over. I mean, I'm not sure.
Large
how much
gathering
demand
for
there is for
cheesesteaks
food
doesn't
trucks.
sound like a good idea.
I'll walk over.
Middle of the blizzard right now. Let's go do it. I'm in. Okay.
Yeah, I could just see us being a facilitator with that, not trying to
Yeah.
actually run it or something.
Yeah, no, Jason wants to do some things along the trail here with kind of like a arts festival in the parking lot of the township building. We'll get people out on the trail on a nice, you know, early summer evening, you know, and with a couple food trucks and just, you know, ice cream truck, that kind of thing. So we definitely can and help facilitate those kinds of things. So we're looking forward to it. I know Jason's got everything planned like it's going forward this summer. So let's hope it does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does Christine still have a question or hand still up?
I do not, I think.
Okay. Okay, so I guess there's no other public comment. The only other item would be have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. You guys want to work on any of those outside things offline, go right ahead. I'm happy to assist. You just can't have all members talking at the same time back and forth on email. So if there's a couple that Ed and Mike, if you guys want to touch base about survey questions, or Brian, send them my way. We'll work together. I just
All right.
try to help you as much as we can.
So Mark, you'll send those additional survey questions over to Brian as soon as you get it?
Yep, as soon as I get, she sent me everything, so I should have all that off to you, hopefully tomorrow.
Actually, could you send it to all of us?
Yeah.
Okay,
Up to everybody.
all right.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Yep.
You all.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
All right, guys, have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe.